Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. In an earlier show, we talked about Joe Biden's infrastructure plan and broke it down for the green and the not so green. Well, the part I want to talk about today is the part relating to broadband expansion. Here, let me share with you a headline from a publication called ARS Technica. In Biden's $100 billion broadband plan, Biden will be hated by big ISPs, welcomed by internet users. Biden wants to end hidden fees and fund municipal and nonprofit networks. Now this is really important for two main reasons. One, the green aspects of it, the privacy aspects of it, and also what they mean when they say they're anti-socialist, that they're standing up to big government, and how that can actually be used to harm the public. First, regarding the green economy. Well, you may remember my earlier show about green stimulus versus funding business as usual, or funding what they call high carbon projects like the airlines, the fossil fuel industries. I showed there an Oxford study, that showed that every dollar spent towards green infrastructure actually creates more wealth and job opportunity for the average people than does funding those high carbon projects. Now, how does broadband fit in with that? Well, in that Oxford study, they also mentioned the expansion of broadband. I believe the idea here is to expand people's opportunity to not have to take airplane flights to go to their very important meetings and drive all around to these meetings, but instead allow them to telecommute or remote learn, thereby reducing the overall consumption of power and the Earth's resources. But now, if you are listening to those media outlets like Fox News or maybe InfoWars or those type of things that like to position everything green as part of some big nefarious conspiracy, let me say au contraire. Here's why. Look, what they are leaving out is I too, and many people also share concerns about privacy relating to the internet and cybersecurity and how every move is being tracked and monitored by these large corporations. But these organizations, these media outlets constantly warning about the big green conspiracy, they are not steering you towards organizations that are actually concerned about our internet privacy. So therefore, I will refer you to the ACLU's Privacy and Technology Project. So now we've moved past that, what I call maybe a red herring or that distraction, about this conspiracy idea. Let's move on next to the question of why does the United States of America and so many places, rural areas, inner cities, tribal lands have such lousy internet connection? Well, it turns out that that's actually related to this whole so-called anti-socialism thing. And I say so-called because a lot of it's really being driven by large lobbying organizations which are funded by what I call the reckless elements of the business community. And in this case, it's telecommunications. This issue was first brought to my attention when I was listening to an episode of Planet Money. And on the Planet Money show, they highlighted a town in North Carolina, I believe, called Wilson. Wilson in North Carolina had really lousy internet service or lousy broadband, if I'm remembering this episode correctly. So what happened was the town fathers or the town politicians went to, I believe it was Time Warner, and they asked for, Time Warner, could you please work with us in getting better internet connection here? Time Warner apparently said, no thank you. They said, how about we partner up with them? And they said, no thank you to that too. So the town of Wilson went ahead and created their own network, their own broadband network. They provided really excellent service that the locals were happy with. They could simply call local help desk and ask for the local helper like Mabel, and Mabel would help them out. They didn't have to call some faraway, distant call center. The rates were inexpensive. Well, the telecom industry, through their lobbyists, got North Carolina to pass a bill to outlaw municipal-owned broadband. Now, the town of Wilson pushed back and they got a carve out for themselves only, but other towns were prevented from going forward with this option. And really interestingly, according to that episode, it's not just North Carolina, but what they do is they meaning these lobby organizations, they create what are called model legislation, which are kind of like cut and paste. Apply to North Carolina, apply to Utah, apply to wherever you want, just fill in the details. And what happens then is you get politicians, and sadly to say, typically Republican politicians, are going to use language like freedom and anti-socialism and anti-big government, when really what they're doing is preventing the public from having their own solutions. So citing from that ARS Technica article I'm going to post for you below the show, they say, The broadband industry and Republicans have been fighting city-owned networks for years, and nearly 20 states have laws that restrict the growth of municipal broadband. While Democrats have proposed eliminating those state laws, congressional Republicans last month proposed a nationwide ban on municipal broadband. So, just last month, the Republicans proposed a nationwide ban on municipal broadband, and it's going to be packaged as freedom and those kind of words to get buy-in from average people who aren't going to benefit from it. Now, you still may be sold on this anti-public sector solution, which I'm not, but let's move on from that for a moment, and let's take a look at another aspect. Transparency. Transparency. So, quoting again from that Ars Technica, Biden's plan to require internet providers to clearly disclose the prices they charge is another idea hated by major broadband providers, which love to advertise low rates and then hit users with much higher monthly bills through a slew of hidden fees. So now if we think back to the Trump era, what happens is they're going to package taking away our rights to know as they're getting rid of government red tape and that type of thing. Here, the article harkens back to the Obama era. Title II regulation under Obama included rules requiring more price transparency, but they were eliminated when Trump administration FCC chairman Ajit Pai led a vote to deregulate the industry and repeal net neutrality rules. Okay, so look, it's not just big private monopolies versus so-called socialism in terms of public sector ownership, but it's also simply allowing for transparency and consumer right to know and that type of thing. But, look, if you are still anti-public sector solution, I just want to point out a couple of reasons why I'm for it. For one thing, let's think back to the founding of the United States of America. Well, right there in that founding was the establishment of a publicly owned post office. So public sector solutions are nothing new. They're simply portrayed that way. Libraries go back in time, as does public education, universities, and so on. The roads, the police, the fire. But also, interestingly, and Biden administration draws this comparison, was the electrification of rural areas. That was initially started during the New Deal. So a lot of these utilities were, and some still are, publicly owned. In fact, if you think about it, in many places the water is publicly owned. So what's happened is the public sector has shrank under the name of freedom and that type of thing. Look, those lobbying organizations got stronger, and I'll think about it in the case of the public power utilities. As they're replaced by privately owned utilities, well, how much more lobbying power is that given to the oil, gas, and nuclear industries to really slow down a transition towards conservation and renewables? Would they have had that power if more of it was publicly owned? You see, freedom versus public sector, it's not that simple. But now, as usual, I also criticize Joe Biden. And if you are one of those people who are already with me, you would like to see more public sector solution, well, we don't know how it will turn out with Biden. Let me read you an important caveat from Politico. Despite this aggressive posture, Biden has historically had close ties to a mix of telecom executives. Longtime Comcast executive David Cohen helped prominently fundraise for Biden on the campaign trail. And one of his former staffers is now a top lobbyist at T-Mobile. So let's remember the lessons with the Obama administration. He initially came out for a public sector option for healthcare, and then, maybe in a way as a bargaining chip with the medical industry, and then he quickly backed down once the public wasn't clamoring for it. Obama's environmental policies, pretty good, pretty solid, but he also really wanted to work with the oil and gas industry and help promote them as well. So my point here is Biden is no Bernie Sanders, and he requires vigilance on the part of the public. And we need to also, my other point is, when you hear a lot of this anti-socialism talk, try to tease out in your head what's sincere from what's insincere, what's simply a cover to protect business as usual. And when we think about telecom as a solution to all of our commuting issues, well, let's also think about how much of all this commuting and racing around going to important meetings is really so important and necessary. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please remember to subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell, comment, like, and until next time, peace be with you.